Good morning, folks. It's the San Jacinto Trail Report from San Jacinto Peak. I'm just walking away from the summit hut. You can see it behind me there. You can probably see my tracks, see what my tracks look like in the snow. It is Thursday, 3rd of April, 2025, probably about 9:30 in the morning. And as you can probably tell from how my tracks look behind me, we have a little bit of fresh powder, about 2 inches up here. We had a ½ inch in Idlewild that barely settled. It was only about 0.75 of an inch, less than an inch at Saddle Junction, which is about PCT mile 179 roughly. And then everywhere above about 9,000 feet, pretty consistent 2 inches, including all the way up here. Has drifted a little bit more in the trails, as you might expect, but as you can probably see largely behind me, it's not deep enough to have obscured the existing tracks, which is helpful, and pretty straightforward. Let me see if I can show this. Relatively thin, you can see where the firm parts of the existing tracks are, so relatively easy going this morning. Just took me about half an hour longer than usual to come up, just because of coming through the extra powder, but there is a sign of PCTers already on the move and around, so good track on Devil's Slide and on most of the PCT, including already going through on Fuller Ridge, so that's relatively straightforward. As you probably saw when I showed you my feet just then, I haven't used spikes this morning. The powder's very nice and soft and dry, which always gives a nice feel underfoot, so that's not a big problem. And like I say, it's the existing track is right underneath your feet, so it's pretty straightforward going. There is a chance of a little more snow this afternoon. Not really calling for anything down at mid elevations, kind of Idlewild elevation at this point, but there is the possibility of another inch up here. We'll see if that happens. It's proving to be pretty hard to predict because it's just little individual cells, storm cells coming by. And then the main news is that it's going to get dramatically warm really quickly. Be nice and cold today. At the peak I just recorded, the air temperature was about 12. I think that's about -10 centigrade, somewhere in there, and the wind chill was -9 Fahrenheit. I think that's about -23 centigrade. So chilly. PCT is generally not carrying the equipment for that kind of condition, those kinds of conditions, and it'll stay that way probably tomorrow. Still be well below freezing on Saturday, and then it gets really warm really quickly. In a week's time they're calling for 50 and 80 low high in Idlewild, which isn't an April temperature at all. That's more of a June temperature, even an early July temperature potentially, which means it'll probably be 100 plus in the desert. So I mean, PCTers need to be aware that they could be up here, wake up in their tent up in the San Jacinto high country, and it's maybe 40 something centigrade, it's 40 something Fahrenheit, and by the time they descend down towards Cabazon it could be 40 centigrade, i.e. 100 plus Fahrenheit. So that's going to be a challenge next week, just the sheer contrast as much as anything. Obviously up here melting will be extremely fast. Snow's already pretty thin. The total depth even up here at San Jacinto Peak is only about 16-17 inches, even with this couple of inches of fresh on top. That could easily melt off in those sorts of temperatures. It could easily melt off, not much over a week. Certainly in a couple of weeks it'll be nothing more than a few patches if those sorts of temperatures persist. In terms of underfoot conditions, for most people, microspikes will be fine. Today, tomorrow, maybe even Saturday morning, in theory, you could probably use crampons, but they're certainly not required. And with experience, poles plus, good grippy footwear is probably going to be enough for most people. As I said, certainly below 6,000, there's no snow to speak of. It's very, very limited below about 7 or even 7,500 feet. I look south towards Apache Peak. There's very little snow to speak of in that area, for example. So it's really only the San Jacinto high country above about 8,000 feet that snow's much of a factor at this point. And otherwise, a beautiful day in the San Jacinto Mountains, and safe hiking, everyone.